welcome back to EDC Garage. This is the continuation of seeing if this 1958 223 engine will fit into the shoebox chassis. It should have the correct bell housing pattern for that early narrow pattern transmission from BorgWarner. Again, the reason why I'm even entertaining to use this motor is, one, they're known to be very reliable. I've heard really good fuel economy specs, and again, if it's the transmission I want to use. So I'm gonna fiddle around with the flywheel and the bell housing and some stuff and see what it takes to take this apart, and maybe once and for all see if this engine is a candidate, will fit, could fit, or move on to something else. All right, stay tuned. 5/8 on the bolt head. I'm going to take this. Plan is to take this bell housing off, flywheel, clutch, so I can just kind of slip the transmission in and out, just to see if this thing, make it easier to mock it up. Like 3 bolts hold on the starter motor, and that's a 1/2 inch head. A little hard to do this one-handed. And hold the camera. I need a cameraman. A woman, person, thing, sir. Okay, there we go. Something fell off. These are minus the 3 bolts. These look very similar to the old flathead V8 starter motors. And if I think this motor was a 58, then this should be 12 volt. I think the 56, I believe, was the first year 12. Don't quote me on that. And this is what fell off. So it's got a keeper bracket thing. I don't know. It's important. It's just easier to put the bolts right back in, so trying to replace these later will cost you time and money. You leave them where you found them. You should have them when you need them. So far, I've only seen 3 main bolts holding this bell housing on. Now I'm gonna start taking off this little cover here that screws in. Start working on that. And 1/2 inch bolt to remove this steel cover from the bell housing. And I've noticed, including the main bolts to the block through the bell housing, were already loose. So it looks like somebody was already kind of playing with this before me. And as you see, there's this one here. So another, I think, a separate plate cover for the flywheel. Used to working on flathead V8s more, so this is all kind of new to me. This newer, fancy 1950s technology instead of the 1930s and early 40s stuff I've used to working on. Super high tech. Got the road draft tubes in the way. And that's also a 1/2 inch on the road draft tube. That's good, guys. I like having things that are not metric, or not a mix of the two. And there's one on this side as well. Of course, I have to go back up. Looks like I need an opening wrench because the steering linkage is in the way. Plus, there's one more I need to grab. That's the Yeah, this motor seems like it's a fairly solid motor. Now, I've heard the 240s and 300s are pretty bulletproof, but this deep skirt design and the wide blocks has something similar. I heard were pretty robust engines for the time. And this engine was considered, if I have the specs right, relatively had a short stroke. I think it was 3.6, where like the flathead V8s were 3.75, and many of the 6-cylinders, I think at the time, at least the Chrysler's Plymouth motors, I think they were well over 4-inch stroke on those puppies, so they're pretty torquey. Where this one was kind of revolutionary, I guess. If you look at the, of course, I think the Studebaker had a shorter stroke, little 170 cubic inch engine. Well, if you look for old, for sure, like a 1954 Ford commercial, the new V8 Y block, and this was out already for a year. Started out as a 215. Ford advertises it that it lower, less stroke, that the motor can go further with fewer revolutions, and it's more economical, less loss of friction and all that. And I keep reading that these things were pretty economical gas mileage, even in a truck. But I guess we'll find out. Looks like I can't talk and work at the same time, so I need to concentrate. Okay, found another bolt. I mean, kind of semi-hidden right back here. Easy to miss, right underneath where the starter would be. Yeah, I remember my grandpa used to tell me on those old Ford flatheads, V8s, they had 2 water pumps, right bank, left bank. It's basically like 2 4-cylinders put together. Anyway, in they had an earlier 21 stutter flathead, and then the later 21 stutters up to the 24 stutters, there was a bolt that was hidden in the spout of the water pump. So if you didn't know about it, it was all covered in rust. You would probably start hitting on it with a mallet and probably break things. So some of these older cars and even newer stuff, you just got to be just take your time and look around and see if there's any hidden booby traps. Who knew? So I guess if you get rid of the extra bolt, it comes off a lot easier. Okay, I need both hands on this one. Looks like we have a little mouse nest and some bees, and wasps making a home there. And 1/2-inch head for what's holding the pressure plate onto the flywheel. It's coming off pretty easy, so at least that part didn't get too crusty, and obviously somebody was in there before. Yeah, this is still nice and squishy. A little bit of hantavirus for the mice, poop. Got this in the valley. I live up in the foothills, so we got plenty of rodents here too, but they seem to be a little bit more prevalent in the valley. Let's get them loose right now, and then take them way out. Just give you guys kind of idea. Looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 6 holding these on. Whether I go with this style motor or this very motor, if I can make it come back alive. Like I said before, flathead V8s, I've had motors that were completely frozen, and a little bit of marble mixture oil, diesel down the cylinders, freed up, and I drove for a little bit and thought just to make sure it's a good motor. Ended up driving in like for a couple of years of 2000, because I was poor, like over 2,000 miles a month on this thing, and it just went and went. So I'm hoping these motors are still pretty robust, like little flathead V8s. The only reason why I'm not probably planning on putting flathead V8 in this thing is gas mileage. But the flathead V8s aren't bad. Is the overheating problem, because in the summer it gets well over 100 degrees daily. High 90s, 100s, common. So I need something. My grandpa had a 41 Ford. They worked for a telephone company in the Mojave Desert. He drove that everywhere. Same thing, thousands of miles on it. So they can do it. It's just, it's a little harder when you're stuck in traffic. And yeah, 5-speed would be better, or automatic would be better for that daily driving, but I can work on this stuff and it's cheaper. And I hate to say it, I don't see a super bright future for our country unless some things change. So I think those kind of learn how to be kind of like Cuba, where we can work on things, make all things work. Granted, our overlords let us have petrol and parts. I think you can keep driving, but we'll see. Put those there for a minute. And then I'll put this in my storage locker, the 50 Coupe, for safekeepings. So there's your probably like 1958 clutch pressure disc, and that's kind of what it is. Pretty simple system. What's that? The pilot bearing there. See, is this a bushing or does this have? It's a bearing. It might be just a bushing. Interesting. Yeah. It's been a while since I messed with these. I think they call this a long style. There was the Borg deck. They these have these fingers, and then the Chevys kind of have like, I think they call them like a diaphragm. They have all these little teeth. That seems to be kind of common. Even Fords use those today. Just gonna mock it back on. There is one dowel pin that I can see. There's probably more that I'm missing. Okay, it's got it into the pilot bearing, the input shaft. So I'm just gonna kind of lightly screw it in and start lowering this on that trip here. Kind of see how we're doing for clearance here. Modifications we might have to make. Note, I have seen people where they took the left, because people do sometimes they take this out and they'll put a Mustang 2 front suspension, which has a lower cross member for, which is nice if you have like small block Ford, which the oil pumps up front, oil sump I should say, and oil pump. What I have seen people do, these are pretty good sized massive cross members, is I've seen people, they cut them and then box them and make clearance. So I might have to do this with either this engine or Y block, or definitely if small block Ford. So anyway, let's see how this fits. All right, so looking at the pan and in the oil pump, there's this, I don't see any way how much lower this motor has to go without having like a Mustang 2 suspension. Would kind of defeat the whole purpose of having a 3 in a tree. With a racket pinion, you have to give up on that. So I don't really see this motor fitting very well. So I'd rather try something else. So my dad just picked this up. This is a 289. This is an earlier 5-bolt pattern. So this should most definitely have, look at the transmission there, it's an overdrive, the right bolt pattern for my 50 Coupe. But then it looks like this motor is not going to work out. But like anything in life, you don't give up. You try other options.